One of the characteristics that is very important to talk about as far as members of the House and Senate is incumbency. Prior to the 1950s, many people only served one term. Today, it has often become a career, and there's very little turnover. We talk about the Democrats taking back the House and the Senate in 2006, but there were only a few people that really switched. In comparison, it's not as though we have 200 people being replaced. The Republican Revolution of the early 1990s brought in new members, but we continue to see that incumbents hold a great advantage. The Senate is less secure, perhaps because they serve a longer period of time. People have more time to become discontent with them, etc. Senators are more removed from the people. Keep in mind that they represent entire states. Voters favor incumbents for a number of reasons. First of all, they get more media coverage. You have the advantage of name recognition. Think back to the franking privilege, the fact that they're able to send mail without paying for stamps. They can't send campaign mail, but they can send a greetings from Washington, D.C. This is what I've done to help you this week. And that wouldn't be considered a campaign. It would be considered keeping up with your constituents. Incumbents also have money to travel back to their district, many of which do so they can have a very hands-on approach to their district. Members of Congress can also claim pork projects for their district. They can say, oh, look at this beautiful new highway that's coming through our town. Oh, look at the big, beautiful water tower that they've built, whatever it might be. Remember that pork is money that only benefits a specific district. The example I usually use in class is building a bridge across Muddy Creek, getting rid of the Ebenezer hairpins. It would definitely be safe, but people in the state of Wyoming couldn't give two hoots or a holler about building that bridge. However, if it became a part of the national budget, that everyone would share the cost of that. The last piece of incumbency is that if someone has a problem with Social Security, if they have a problem with Medicare, Medicaid, etc., they can call their member of Congress and say, I need help. And oftentimes that member of Congress can help them, thus contributing to incumbency. In terms of the party effects, as far as the characteristics of members of the House and the Senate, Democrats had really benefited from incumbency from 1930s until 1992. Democrats controlled both houses in at least 25 of the Congresses, and at least one house in 28 of the Congresses. In 1994, you had many voters that opposed incumbents. That was the Republican Revolution, which I mentioned in discussing incumbency. People were unhappy with the incumbents because of budget deficits, scandal, bickering between the legislative and executive branches, the conservative coalition of Southern Democrats, which often voted conservatively, and Republicans had controlled Congress from essentially 1994 until 2006, and it seems as though we're going back into more of an era of divided government. I can only imagine. Representing the people isn't always clear how exactly to do that the best. There are several different views that members of the legislature take. The first being representational view, that legislators would vote to please the constituents in order to get reelected and to represent their views. This instance is most likely to be true when constituents have a clear view of the issues and the issue has been likely to attract attention. Think about healthcare. Many people had a strong feeling about healthcare and it got a lot of attention. Studies have shown legislatures tend to vote with constituents' views in mind in the areas of civil rights and social welfare, but less so on foreign policy. Think about how much we know or we don't know about foreign policy as Americans. We might know more about healthcare than we do about the economy in Greece, for instance. So a member of the legislature would pay attention to what we're most willing to voice our ideas on. The second view is the organizational view, that members of the legislature vote with their party leaders or other respected colleagues if their constituents' interest is not at stake. Go back to the idea of the economy in Greece. The next is attitudinal view, and that this is the legislature's ideology determines the vote. Overall, we have seen Congress become increasingly divided in political ideology. Thus, cues from the party have been decreasing in importance, and the view most represented would be the attitudinal. We've seen that members of Congress have become very polarized, that they are pushed apart, and that often leads to more partisan attacks, less constructive negotiations on bills and policies, etc. As far as why that is the case, one of the things that I would encourage you to look back on is the incumbency. We mentioned there that incumbents have money to travel back to their districts. Increasingly, travel has become easier and easier. Members of Congress frequently come home for the weekend. It used to be, think back to the 1950s, 60s, even the 70s. Air travel was rare. It would have taken longer, it would have been more cumbersome, etc. The people stayed in Washington with their families and therefore socialized together. And now you have members of Congress that are back at home, and they aren't forced to play nicely and be friends. Thus, we have a big polarization in Congress.